Hello everybody. I thought I would go ahead and do another lesson type tutorial video, and this time what I'm going to do and what I'm going to talk about is what is glaucoma. Okay, so I have a clipboard here with some paper on it, and I have some colored pencils. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use these colored pencils to draw a schematic of what happens when somebody develops glaucoma. So I'm sure that most of you guys have heard of the disease glaucoma, and you might not really fully understand exactly what it is. But I would like to go ahead and share my knowledge with you so that you have an understanding, because it really is a common disease that we see a lot, and everybody is susceptible to it. Okay, so the first thing I want to tell you is that glaucoma is commonly referred to as the silent thief of sight. Okay, the silent thief of sight. Now, why is it called that? Well, because most of the time people who develop glaucoma have no idea that they have it. Okay, so unless you come in and have your eyes examined by an eye doctor, have your pressures checked, you really won't know or feel that you have it developing. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a drawing, okay, of the eye. Okay, hope you guys can see this. I'm actually going to draw the blue part here. It's going to be the iris. And right behind the iris is the lens of the eye. And the lens is held up by some little strings. They're called zonules. And this right here is the cornea. Okay, so I'll go ahead and label so that you guys know what's going on here. So this right here is the cornea. Okay, hope you can see that. And this here is the lens. Okay, and this area here is the anterior chamber. Okay, and we're going to get back to the anatomy in a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and draw the rest of the structures in the back here, and then I'll start explaining how it all works together. Okay, so let me go ahead and draw in next the optic nerve. Now, if you guys watched my other video, I had a basic optics lesson video posted quite a few months back, and I do go into some brief explanation about the structures here and a little bit about how we see, okay, how vision is formed and perceived. So if you guys watched that video, then you remember what the optic nerve is. And you also remember what the macula is, okay? So the macula is right back here. I'll show you what I have so far. This is the macular area, okay? This is the optic nerve that carries the vision, okay? Whatever image you have right here gets carried through the optic nerve, through the fibers, and it goes back into the brain, into an area of the brain called the visual cortex. It's essentially located in the back part of your head, okay? So, again, let's review. We have the lens, we have the zonules, and, oops, I forgot to mention, the zonules, right next to those, are a very important structure called the ciliary body. And this is a muscle, okay? I'm going to draw it in pink because it's actually a muscle. This is what controls the lens. But in addition to controlling the focus of your lens, it has a very, very important function, which is to create what's called aqueous humor. Okay, now, aqueous humor, guys, is the fluid that carries the nutrients, food, oxygen, for all these structures up here. This is called the anterior segment of the eye, okay? It feeds part of the lens, it feeds part of the iris, it feeds the back surface of the cornea, okay? And it just basically has a flow, which I'll draw in pink, okay? The aqueous fluid flows out from the ciliary body, okay? It gets produced here, flows out through the small little channel between, you can see that small channel between the lens and the blue part, which is the iris, okay? And then it flows out, okay? It basically does this outflow right here, okay? It flows out, see what it goes through there, okay? That pink line where it's flowing out, okay, the area that flows out is called the trabecular meshwork. Okay, now this might be a little bit more information than you guys signed up for, but I think it's important so you can really understand how the eye works, because to really fully understand what happens when you develop glaucoma, you have to have an idea of how the fluid gets produced and how it flows out. Because what glaucoma essentially is a damaging, okay, something is damaging the optic nerve back here. What usually damages the optic nerve? Well, many things can damage the optic nerve, but in glaucoma, and again, not in all cases, but in most cases, it has to do with the pressure of the fluid. The pressure of the eye goes up because there's some damage here in the outflow, and the fluid is unable to flow out efficiently, so it builds up. It's like a backflow almost, okay? It's like a clogged sink, a clogged drain, okay? There's nowhere for the fluid to go. It's a closed system, okay? So when that fluid clogs up, it puts a force, it puts a pressure back here. That pressure gets exerted on right here, the weakest, most vulnerable part of the optic nerve is at the very tip of it right here, where it's inserted into the eyeball, okay? And unfortunately, these fibers, these layers right back here, are very delicate, and so if you press too hard on them for too long, okay, you end up damaging them. When you damage these fibers back here, you can actually visibly see it, okay? As an eye doctor, you can appreciate the structure of the optic nerve. When you look at it, it looks sort of like a donut. The head of the optic nerve is a circle, and inside the middle of the circle is a depressed area, okay? And then you have, of course, vessels coming out, okay? And as those vessels exit, you can basically tell, I was looking for maybe a picture of it, but I don't have it here. Okay, but you can basically tell how deep this hole is, okay, how deep and how big. Now, what I just drew here is a healthy looking optic nerve. We look at the rim tissue, okay, if it's healthy, pink, there's nice blood flowing through it, okay? There's a lot of different ways to tell if it's healthy. Now, if you look at a nerve, for example, and it looks elongated, like that hole in there, you see how the hole is now elongated vertically? That's one of the tip-offs that you might have glaucoma. Or if the nerves are not symmetrical, okay, so like this is the right nerve and this is the left nerve. If you see this in a patient, then that would be a red flag. So if you go in for an eye exam and your eye doctor says, hey, I suspect that you may have glaucoma, he or she has their reasons for saying that, but this could be one of the things that they're seeing, okay? Now, if they are seeing this, what they're going to do typically is put you through a secondary stage of testing, okay? And one of the things that they're going to ask you to do is, first of all, they're probably going to want to scan. They're going to want to take pictures of each nerve. So this is called disc photography. This is the disc. And they also will likely want you to go through a scan of the nerve. It's a special machine it just basically takes a scan and it's able to map out. It's all computerized nowadays. Back in the day, we didn't have this technology. Back when I was going to school, actually, we didn't have that. But nowadays, we have these wonderful scans that can, map this out, and we can track progression, okay? Because I want you guys to understand glaucoma, it's a very tricky disease sometimes to diagnose. It's not always cut and dry. So if there's a suspicion, sometimes you have to just gather all the information you can and then monitor for changes. Because like I said, it's not always, blatantly obvious or readily evident what's going on. So the second thing they'll ask you to do is something called a visual field test, okay? And why do they want you to do that? And what is that? Well, visual field test is basically a test where they're mapping out the function of all of your peripheral vision, okay? Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, all of the peripheral vision, it comes from the peripheral retina, okay? Now, going back to how the eye works, the peripheral retina all coalesces into certain areas, certain sections, certain bundles of optic nerve. You see how I'm drawing these lines? This section right here may correlate to this part of your retina. This part of your retina correlates to this part of your visual field, okay? The light comes in through there, it gets focused there, and then it travels in through the optic nerve in this particular bunch. Now, when glaucoma first develops, if it kills off that bunch first, then this part of your visual field will be missing. Okay, this area, this little chunk of your visual field will go blank. It'll just go blank. Okay, so when you do a visual field test, you are asked to click a little button, okay? And that little button, they're going to flash some lights. They're going to put you in a tube, a machine, and they're going to ask you every time you see a little light flash that you click the button. Well, if you end up missing a bunch of the lights, it can tell us a lot of information that that particular area of your vision is now lost. Glaucoma tends to cause more of a tunnel-like tunnel vision effect in the moderate stages of it. The beginning stages you really won't notice much at all, but it can progress very rapidly or sometimes very slowly. It just depends on the person. But if it develops and it goes unnoticed, like let's say you haven't had an eye exam for, I don't know, 5-10 years, whatever, and even though your vision is maybe 20/20, you might have perfect vision, or you might just need simple reading glasses or whatnot. A lot of people think that if they see really well, they can read street signs, that they don't need an eye exam, but that's not true. Because people out there are millions of people, thousands of people walking around that have glaucoma that have absolutely no idea that they have it. Okay? So it's important, you know, every so often, if you're young, you're healthy, your eyes are perfect, you should have an eye exam at the very latest every 2 years. If you wear glasses and you wear contacts and you have a family history of glaucoma, or you have diabetes, or you have high blood pressure, you should have your eyes checked every year. Okay? Now, let's talk about that real quick. So diabetes and high blood pressure are also risk factors, and so is family history, but they're risk factors to developing glaucoma because this optic nerve is fed by blood vessels all back here. Okay, there's blood vessels that feed all this tissue. Okay, when you have diabetes, diabetes is a vascular condition. So is high blood pressure. High blood pressure damages your arteries and your veins. Okay, and when that happens, the blood flow gets restricted. Right? When the blood flow is restricted back here, that can also make the nerve start to die. Even though your pressure might be totally normal, you may still develop glaucoma because of blood flow issues back here. Okay? So that's really important to know, and so that you don't think that just because your pressure came out normal, maybe you went to a screening, you know, maybe you did the air puff test at some point and it came out okay. That doesn't always give you the whole story, right? So the take-home point here is to realize that this is a very tricky disease. It's a very common disease, okay? I see people all the time with glaucoma. I had a 28-year-old patient with glaucoma not so long ago. So age, you know, although age is a risk factor, but it doesn't necessarily mean that because you're young that you're immune, that you're not susceptible, because that's absolutely not true. Although it's not as common, okay, in those younger ages, we do still see it. We absolutely do still see it. So, you know, just bear all that in mind. And, you know, if you guys do have any questions about glaucoma, what is glaucoma, what happens, what the process, I hope I gave you a good explanation, at least a starting explanation, without getting too technical. And I hope that this was enjoyable for you. Oh, and I forgot to say, as far as treatment. Okay, so let's say you got diagnosed with glaucoma, the one that has it, you know, whatever. There are drops that you can use as treatment, and the drops essentially, they make the outflow more efficient so that the pressure goes down. And that's usually what happens when you take the medication. The pressure goes down, and that gives more oxygen flow to the optic nerve, less pressure, less force going back here, so it slows down the process. There's no cure for glaucoma. All right, so once you've been diagnosed and you're put on eye drops, you're likely going to be on them for the rest of your life. So, you know, just bear that in mind. But I did want to give you guys a little bit of hope, so that you know that it's not, you know, the end of the world if you do develop it, and it certainly can be managed. Okay, so just remember, it's important, have your eyes examined, and if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Post them in the comments. Let me know if you like this video. I'd like to do a few more like this for you guys, so you can at least learn while you're relaxing. Okay, thanks. Have a good day. Bye.